There are anime. You all know what that is, but then there are those series that go that extra mile. Anime that leave you in awe and give you a whole new level of respect for the creative mind and inspire. Series that give you core memories and make you feel a wide range of emotions or specific emotions deeply. This could be anything, since for some Dragon Ball would fit that description, and for the sickos it would be one of the 80 plus Gundam anime out there. That's not hyperbole, if anything I lowballed the number. But you know what I mean. Shit that just scratches that specific itch in the back of your mind. Monster, Gintama, Gurren Lagann, and after finally watching it, Fullmetal Alchemist. Yes, Brotherhood, Jesus. The amount of times I've been asked that, like if I clipped the right wire to defuse a bomb. Most of you are familiar with why that matters, but for those of you that aren't, Fullmetal Alchemist had an anime adaptation made in 2003, but it isn't as faithful, changing some things around in comparison to Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, which released in 2009. If I'm not mistaken, the anime caught up to the manga, and so they created their own ending and other things were changed. So you will often hear people say a series that needs a remaster should get the Brotherhood treatment. From what I've been told, people who have seen both, FMA isn't bad, but there is a subsection of the fanbase that prefers it or prefers aspects of it. But your safe bet is to go with FMAB, and if you are interested in seeing more, then you can just drop the B. I'm also not sure if this is still the case, but there was this time where people would actively downvote anything that surpassed FMAB on my anime list, which might be one of the most unemployed things I've ever heard, only outclassed by me trying to get a jaw rune in Diablo 2 so I could put Enigma on my Warlock. But ignoring that one weird part of the fan base that does that, the overall sentiment of it being held in high regard is well warranted. I can never predict who the algorithm decides to introduce me to, but if you are by chance someone who hasn't seen it, then hear this quick portion out, leave a like, and shimmy on out of here. Before we continue with the video, I gotta put you on to something real quick, because I know for a fact some of you have sat there and thought, yeah, I could run this whole civilization thing way better than what actually happened. Be honest, you've had that thought at least once. Well, this video is sponsored by Epoch, where you get to put that theory to the test. You start off in the Ice Age, nothing going on, just you, your people, and the fact that everything is trying to kill you. And from there, you're building things up, gathering resources, and pushing your civilization forward through different eras. Like, you go from caveman to something actually advanced, way faster than you would expect. What I like about it is it's not doing too much. You don't need to sit there micromanaging every little thing or feel like you're taking an exam just to understand what's happening. You can just hop in, make progress, and actually see your world evolve without it feeling dragged out. You run into historical figures like Archimedes, Shakespeare, Joan of Arc, all of them helping you move things forward, which is kind of wild when you think about it. Like, imagine having that lineup just backing your decisions. The whole appeal is just how smooth it feels to play. You're building, upgrading, moving forward, seeing everything change in real time without it becoming a headache. So if you want to check it out, go through my link in the description to download Pop Epoch. It supports the channel, and if you use code POPLAUNCH or scan the QR code, you'll get some extra resource boxes to give you a head start. Now back to where we left off. FMAB is a series about two brothers, Edward and Alphonse Eric.
Shut up, I know it's Elric.
Their father is believed to be a deadbeat, and their mom is just dead. They commit a huge no-no, which is trying to bring someone dead back to life, which fails miserably, resulting in Ed losing a leg and Al losing his entire fucking body. Ed then gives up his arm to bring back Al's soul, which he then puts in a suit of armor. The two of them are then recruited to work for the government as state alchemists while trying to figure out how to get their bodies back, but end up learning that things will have an impact on the entire world and they must put a stop to it. But Ed and Al aren't the only characters worth mentioning, because even though the plot of FMAB is dope, the cast of characters is just as dope. So, if you're frustrated with stories that if you're frustrated with your own inability to speak, if you're frustrated with stories that set stuff up that was clearly meant to be expanded upon and then gets dropped like a fly, you will not experience that with this. You will feel satisfied, emotional, and I need a word that makes this description sound less erotic. It's really, really good. I'm such a genius, aren't I? But you didn't need me to tell you that, so go leave. I'm about to get into spoiler-ish territory. For those of you that remained, lovely. One of the funny things that happened when watching FMAB was whenever I would tell one of my buddies what just happened and what episode it happened in, they would say, damn, that happens that early? I promise that occurred like 5 times, which is indicative of the amount of shit that goes down in this story. It's a ball that starts rolling and avalanches into something enormous before having a big boom at the end. So early Fullmetal has some insane stuff worth talking about, like, well, it's not funny, I'm sorry. This is one of the most infamous scenes in anime, so it was already spoiled for me. One of three things, and I'm already a bit jaded from Bondrewd and his shenanigans. Still, I can imagine it being pretty traumatic for anyone that went into this blind and experienced Show Tucker raw. Pause. Still, it's an incredibly fucked scene, and when Scar comes in and finishes them both off, oh, my heart sank. It's still a powerful moment, regardless of that too, given Ed is confronted with his past mistakes, which were shown in the episodes before all of this, covering his backstory and the incident that got them into this whole ordeal. Very quickly, FMAB shows you that it is not messing around. I've said this before in previous videos, but a lot of shonen from that time spent the first half stage setting, although after trying to get into Hitman Reborn, some of them spent the first half dicking around. Like, I mean, my god. But the second half paying it all off. FMAB does this as well, but it does an excellent job of ensuring the first half is still full of serious, crucial plot points and character moments, not just largely comedy. So there is no, you gotta give it time to get good disclaimer. While for other series like Gintama, that is one of its strengths, I'm glad FMAB wasn't that. Just within the first 10 episodes, you get Ed and Al toppling over the power in Lior on the search for a Philosopher's Stone, which sends it into chaos for a moment. You get their backstory, the Show Tucker stuff, introduction to some of the 7 deadly sins, the introduction to Scar, who is Cool McCool Guy, and the Ishvalan genocide. The possibility that the government which Ed and Al work for is compromised, Hugh's investigating it, which leads to his assassination, pour one out for the homie, which brings about another iconic scene in anime. Today is a terrible day for Rain. Once again, 2 of 3 things I already knew about, but at least with this, I didn't know the context at all, nor did I expect it to happen that early. Still, that moment is something that most writers hope to get one day, and it happens in episode 10 out of a 64 episode anime, which is nuts. It also sparks the journey we get with Roy Mustang, culminating in a 6 stretch for him later on. The story quickly goes from what you think will be a personal journey to a complicated issue of a small group of individuals within a militaristic government that have been secretly running the nation and sacrificing people for their bigger plan while looking down on the rest of humanity. Anyways, later on we will get into my favorite character in the entire series, but I do want to say now that Al is spectacular. Ed is the main character considering his actions specifically kick off the story and we get his POV the most. Also, Ed is equally spectacular, but I have a soft spot for Al and his condition throughout the story. Also, him roasting that chick in episode 7 for not having a job was a funny moment that stuck with me. Speaking of things that stuck with me, Greed, probably my 3rd favorite character, maybe 4th, I don't know. There are a lot of heavy hitters, which is a great thing. Thank God he didn't die for real that early on, because that's what I thought was going to happen. That gets into the 3rd thing I was spoiled on a long time ago, and that's King Bradley being the sin of wrath. That being revealed that early and the characters figuring it out earlier on also let me know that there was going to be a lot more to the series than I was predicting. It's for the best, because I don't know how big the surprise would have really been. Like, oh, the guy they call my Führer would be evil. Who would have ever thought? It does set the tone that whatever is wrong with the Amestris isn't some hidden group within the government, but it's the core of the system itself, including the leader who is one powerful SOB. The doors are flung wide open, and now every episode you have to question who can be trusted and who can't. Doesn't help that Envy can shapeshift. Totally would, by the way, move aside, Lust. But the selling point of the series, on top of the tension that is created, is very similar to the strengths I would describe for Monster. A story that starts off with a strong personal dynamic that grows into what feels like a documentary of multiple POVs. Characters that start off a certain way but end up being interlinked with other members of the cast. Each character contributes to one of the central themes of the story, making everything feel intentional and thought out. Every episode where progress is made, another element is thrown into the mix, creating a new issue to be solved while we still have the issues and mysteries from the start that still need to be resolved. There are a lot of moments like that in FMAB that make you go, oh shit. Not because of how crazy the moment is itself, there is that, but also because you quickly realize that it's going to make things very interesting. The government framing Ross, shout out Armstrong by the way, almost forgot to do that, and thinking that Roy Mustang barbecued her just for that to be Roy's plan. It would have been interesting to see that be something Roy realized later on and having to deal with the guilt of it, but the approach that they took worked perfectly. The Philosopher's Stones and how they are made via human sacrifice, Hugh's death being hidden from Ed and Al, and the one that really stood out in my mind, Scar being the one who killed Winry's parents, where the ball really starts to roll for Scar's character, and Winry getting more to her character as well, instead of just being a romantic interest for the sake of the trope. Speaking of Scar, I really enjoyed his character. For one, he's one of a few characters that explore war and different perspectives on it. Roy Mustang, Kimberly, Ritza, and Dr. Marco as an example. Scar is really cool, but more than that, his character is understandable, with the understanding that you gotta be willing to extend the same forgiveness that you would want to receive. But since he doesn't believe in offering said forgiveness, and he doesn't expect it either, but is still confronted with the reality that he is now no different than the man that killed his brother, being Kimberly. He isn't the first character I've seen explore revenge and the flaws that come with it, but that doesn't mean seeing him change and grow throughout the story wasn't enjoyable. The next stretch of the story expands things even more, solidifying that any character introduced will play a larger role than anticipated. Father, the one responsible for the 7 deadly sins, looking like Hohenheim, which wasn't a very well-kept secret to be honest. Envy being the one who started the Ishvalan Civil War, Dr. Marco being alive, and Ling becoming the new Greed. We also get the introduction of Sloth, Mira, yes please Armstrong, and the revelation the government is making a legion of immortal soldiers, and that Salim Bradley is Pride. Both sides are building their forces, and now would be a good time for me to talk about my thoughts on the villains in Fullmetal. For me, none of the villains completely stand out above the rest in the way that I think about Johan, Griffith, Takasugi, Toguro, Sensui, Bondrewd, villains like that. Sho Tucker's short-lived, Kimberly is interesting, but no. Scar serves as a villain for a time, but like Greed doesn't count by the end. Father, who we will get into more later, is interesting, but a lot of his dirty work is handled by the other sins for the vast majority of the series. Again, I know they come from him, so that's appropriate. Lust is hot, but all her time in the spotlight is short-lived. Gluttony and Sloth feel more like destructive tools than fleshed out characters, which is fine. Envy and Pride are good, they're really good, but I would define them as nuisance villains, characters you can't wait to see their head caved in or incinerated and humiliated. That's not all there is to them, but for the most part, that's how I felt about them. Then the two best ones for me out of the sins are Greed and Wrath, King Bradley. Greed considering what his character goes through and how his character gets attached to Ling, but again, he doesn't really count as a villain by the end. Still a great character. And then King Bradley, who gets the most amount of screen time, moments of dialogue, and feels kind of like the guy until Father is revealed and takes the reins. The best thing about the group is how they each die though. Once again, with Greed and King Bradley having the best deaths, along with Envy to be fair. Each death is ironic to the sin they represent, and I really love that, and we'll get into that as they happen. Lust already being killed by being exposed for what she truly is and being burned in the hot flames. So saying that I don't hold one of them in particular at the absolute highest standard versus series that pretty much solely focused on one antagonist for an entire arc or the entirety of the story is not really an insult, it's just the attention is spread out a decent bit, which is one of the strengths of the series. Nonetheless, I am more than cool with King Bradley having a seat at the table. The attention being spread out and multiple characters having impact goes for damn near every character we meet as stated earlier. Even ones we wouldn't expect at all, like Barry the Chopper and his real life coming into play, Ed and Al's teacher, Ross, Havoc, Winry and her effective Scar mentioned earlier, the reality that someone's small ripples can create waves. One person can change the course of human history, such as one man we have seen here and there throughout the story. The father of Ed and Al, Hohenheim. AKA the fucking GOAT! If that didn't give it away, Hohenheim is indeed my favorite character in the entire show. Each scene he appears in, he's interesting and from the jump demands attention considering he's related to the main character and his connection to the final big bad of the entire show. He goes from a deadbeat that you might think is the real villain of the story, and instead you figure out he's a man cursed with immortality that falls in love and is unable to keep his promise to his wife, having to leave his children in order to find a way to save the world. To me, Hohenheim works so well as a contrast to Father, as that being wishes to ascend more and devour God itself to become one for freedom, and Hohenheim wishes to become human again, two beings that were considered slaves that went on opposite paths to attain freedom. So much build up to what Hohenheim is and where he's from. I watched episode 40 damn near glued to the fucking screen, and it only gets better. The final 24 episodes is this awesome stretch of seeing how everything that has separately been building up coming together while having the best character moments, or the majority of them in the show for me. Seeing Lior being rebuilt and how people are trying their hardest to move forward after the events at the start of the anime. Scar realizing his new goal. Instead of destroying what exists for revenge, he will do so to help rebuild a new power that will not allow the tragedy that befell his people to happen again. That coincided with the revelation of his other arm that has the power to construct, demonstrating the importance that you can't just leave a void. you have to fill it with something better than what was previously there. The next sin, dying, being gluttony, who is eaten alive. A really cool moment worth mentioning was Pride sending a message by hitting Al's head. In general, the way info is given to others throughout the series, given again the tension and the surveillance and the fact that the bad guys are everywhere at once, was nice. The immortal soldiers are deployed, and then we get the moment that made me sit back and go, okay, Fullmetal really goes that extra step. Things after this would only confirm it more, but this is when it really hit me. Envy confesses that they were the one that killed Hughes. I'm not gonna lie, I was so fucking hyped for this moment because I knew Roy was about to barbecue this green shrimp. I was doing backflips playing church music in my room while Roy started to get his revenge. I'm not exaggerating, my notes for B-roll says 1403, Envy is an idiot. 1518, Roy is gonna go crazy. 1603, LMAO. I can't remember why I said LMAO to be honest, but we'll both find out at the same time. 1741, cookout commences. 1945, goddamn. 2010, yes. 2020, yes in all caps with multiple S's. Think plankton voice, not gay voice. Roy killing Envy, clean animation. See, I would have been perfectly fine with Roy slow cooking this fucker until he begged to be killed. I crave that shit. None of us, I think, would have faulted Roy for doing it. But then Roy has stopped, because no matter how justified he feels, much like Scar, there is a price and a cost for living a vengeful and hate-filled life. If Roy is truly to create change, he cannot carry the hatred that allowed for these evils to happen in the first place. He himself cannot behave like the sin of wrath. So instead of this epic moment for Roy, we get something far better, which is a good chunk of an epic moment, but the real defining scene for him as a character. And not just him, but also an important scene for Rita, Ed, and also Envy. With Ed taking pity on Envy for their jealousy of human connection, Envy instead takes their own life while crying in humiliation as reality hits. There are anime, and then there is Fullmetal. Sloth is then killed shortly after by overexerting himself. The fight between him and the Armstrong siblings was dope, but I had to double take when he said that he was the fastest of the homunculus. Shit caught me off guard. King Bradley's return and death were both insane moments in the series. Not only badass as a return, but also the tragedy of war gets to be explored once again when he kills those Link cares about. Then in his final battle against Scar, he dies at peace having lived a full life. Despite how much for him was predetermined, he at least got to choose his wife. Rage itself dying with a calm demeanor. But despite the best efforts of the group, they are used so that little homunculus in the flask can consume God and become all-powerful. I like how each sacrifice gathered also had an irony about what they lost. Wasn't the biggest fan of how that was spoon-fed to me, but overall I still like the idea. I don't really have words for how crazy it was seeing this thing reach for the fucking sun. As soon as I saw it scream, I realized that was actually a fourth thing that was spoiled for me, a bunch of Discord gifts. I just had no idea. But Hohenheim for years, and the realization of the note Scar's brother left behind, the group was able to set up a counter plan all along, returning the souls of everyone that was sacrificed for power. Greed also gives up his life to stop him, with the realization that Greed didn't need to rule the world and have everything, he just wanted friends, dying in a selfless act of sacrifice. Oh, and Pride was turned into a powerless little baby. I suppose if you want to look at Father, Homunculus in the Flask, whatever you want to call him, and attribute all the sins and their characters to him since they come from him, you can do that. I'm not going to, since each sin quite literally takes on a life of their own and personality traits of their own, but it's worth mentioning, I suppose. But then we get the finale, the moment where Ed has his arm trapped and Al has to decide if he's going to give himself up to save his brother and everyone else. This is where I want to take a moment to discuss Ed and Al, in particular Ed. See, throughout me watching this, Scam would ask me if I thought they were going to get a happy ending, and if Al was going to get his body back. My honest answer being, I don't know. Because of the way the series had set things up and scenes with the both of them confronting what they had done, I could honestly picture either way working for the story. Because I want them to get a happy ending and it would feel deserved, but I also could have seen an ending where they can't take back the mistake they made, where they both have to come to the realization that all they can do is prevent anyone else from suffering their fate by laying their lives down. Maybe that's my sadistic mind being conditioned from all the other stories that have broken my heart. So, Ed. Good old Edward Elric. Ed is interesting. Someone that I would hold in a very similar regard to the way I view Alan Walker from The Gray Man. In other words, I view Ed very highly. Personally, I'm a little more fond of the experience I had with Alan given how so much of his character gets recontextualized later in the story, but with Ed, I love how grounded his character also feels. He's immature, he's emotional. While Alphonse and his struggles living with his body are some of my favorite scenes, so are the scenes where Ed has to be confronted with the fact that he put his brother in that position. Like I said, Ed is immature in a lot of instances, seen especially with how he is with Hohenheim after learning the truth, sticking to what could be seen as naive morals as compensation for the taboo lines he has crossed. Every advancement Ed and Al make throughout the series feels extremely earned. Sacrifice is an important theme in FMAB. Hiromu Arakawa seems to understand how realistic it feels when a character suffers and grows via learning from that suffering. Ed throwing up, traumatizing, digging up what he believed to be the corpse of his mother stuck with me. His and Al's entire journey up to this point has been a lot. In the name of equivalent exchange, what are you getting out of it for the time put into this? What is the lesson for all of us? But what is the lesson for Edward Elric? What is the truth? Well, after Al gives up his life to save Ed, and Ed saves the day, Ed decides he's going to get his brother back, get his body back. What he will have to give up is the thing he thought would be the answer, his ability to use alchemy. Because all he has been and needed to be this entire time, the thing everybody in this story just needed to be, is human. Unlike the homunculus in the flask who wished to sacrifice all of humanity to surpass God, Ed, like his father before him, just needs to be a human being. So who needs alchemy when you have others? Just like the people in Lior, they didn't need miracles. The real miracle was each other. Everything coming together, and each of the characters I care about getting the resolution they deserve. There are anime, then there is Fullmetal. So, Al gets his body back, Roy is in charge and uses the stone to heal his buddy Havoc, Hohenheim is united with his wife in the afterlife, Scar decides to help his people, Ed and Al decide to now use their normal lives to see the world. Because in the end, that's all we need. Each other. And anything can be accomplished with a heart made of full metal.